Let's do domain and range for this first graph. My leftmost x value is -4, not any of my exceptions, so straight bracket. I keep going across my graph and I hit an x value of 6. Not an exception, so straight bracket. For range, my lowest y value is -4, and that goes all the way up to a y value of 3. Neither of those are exceptions, so they're both straight brackets. Now we're going to look at a little bit more complicated situations, because now what I have going on are some arrows. And so this is going to change either my domain and or my range, depending on the exact question. So now if I imagine trying to hit the leftmost portion of my graph, if I try to hit the leftmost portion of my graph, I have an arrow that implies I'm going to the left forever. So that to the left forever would indicate -infinity. And infinity is an exception, so I need to put parentheses, not a straight bracket. Then if I keep going to the right on my graph, I end up at another arrow that's going to the right forever, which implies this is going to positive infinity. That is an exception, so put a parentheses. Now let's do our range, which is the y values. As I start from the bottom, my lowest y value is a 3. Is a 3 an open circle? No. Is it an asymptote? No. Is it an infinity? No. That means it's a straight bracket. And now as I go up the graph, I end at an arrow. And it doesn't matter whether I was looking at the left or the right side of this particular graph. It's going up forever to positive infinity, which is an exception, so I put parentheses. Let's look at these next two. Now, the next one is something we'll look at later called a piecewise function. Maybe you can get why it has that name, because my graph is in two pieces or two chunks. Part of it's a parabola and part's a line. But we're going to start the same way. So with domain, the first thing I hit is this arrow that's going to the left, which means it's going to -infinity. I move to the right, and I stop on this piecewise graph at -1. But it has a filled-in circle, which means as long as there's not a gap, aka this piece starts at -1, I can keep on going, move on with my life. So right here, because one's a filled-in and one's open, I'm okay. And I'm going to keep on going to the right, and this arrow is going to the right forever, so it's going to positive infinity. Okay, why am I emphasizing positive? Because a lot of people look at that and they say, but the arrow is going down. Sure, the arrow is going down, but down is talking about range. And right now I want domain, which is left and right. So that arrow means I'm going to the right forever. Let's talk about the range on this puppy. So as I come up from the bottom, the first thing I hit is an arrow, and that arrow is going down forever. So it's going down to -infinity with a parentheses. And then I keep going up on that piece of my graph, and I totally stop at -1. And that -1 is a hole or an open circle, which means it's a parentheses. Now I'm going to have two pieces for my range, because if I look moving from the bottom to the top, I have a gap. Do you see how I have a gap right here in my function where I don't have any y values? So we're going to put a U for union. And then I need to look at my next chunk, my next piece of my graph, and what's the next lowest y value? The next lowest y value is over here at +1. And that point is not an exception. We don't have a hole there, an asymptote, or an infinity, so that's why it's a straight bracket. And I can keep going up my graph. I don't have any more pieces, and the rest of my graph goes up to positive infinity. The one on the right is like one of my favorite things, so I would really make sure you know how to do this problem on the right. Hint, hint. So my domain, once again, we look at the leftmost value, which on this is -9. It's not a whole, an asymptote, or an infinity, so it's a straight bracket. And then my graph keeps going to the right forever, so positive infinity. If I want to start talking about range, that means that I need to start at the bottom. So as I move up from the bottom, what's the first thing I hit? The first thing I hit is this arrow, which is going down forever, so negative infinity. And as I keep moving up my graph, it hits a y value of 0.